Good morning. I'm going to bring this meeting to order. We do not have everyone present. We have Dr. Burke at remote location. Good morning, Dr. Burke. And we're waiting for Dr. Parker and Councilmember Buscaino and Supervisor Nelson. So they have not yet appeared, but we will go ahead and start the reports for this morning from our legislative analysts. So we call it analysts? Consultants. Our analysts are here. So we'll start with the federal update from Cadish and Associates. And we have, good morning, Dr. Parker. Good morning. Glad to have you join us. The report is from Chris Keurig at Cadish and Associates. And Chris, if you just give us an update on anything that is not in your written report, we'd appreciate it.
Absolutely. Good morning, everybody. Just have a couple quick things to talk about. One is I thought we had a pretty good trip back this week. I think Mayor Mitchell and Supervisor Nelson did a pretty good job of working, meeting with delegation members who we focused on, kind of really effectively explaining what the low NOx rule, what it does, why we need it. And I think we met with, varying degrees of interest and support from all of our delegation members. I will work with Derek and his team either later today or early next week on a list of follow-up items. I know Senator Feinstein's office has already been in contact with me about some of the things that you, Mayor Mitchell, talked with her about vis-a-vis CARB. So they are definitely eager to continue that engagement. The other issue that came up was the glider issue, and also met with kind of the similar levels of interest among the delegation members. I think there's at least from the meetings that I attended, people are looking for us to what the next steps will be at some point. So we'll look forward to working with staff on developing those. And then secondly, just a quick appropriations update. The bill that we follow most closely for you all is, the bill that we follow most closely for you all is it's called the Interior Appropriations Bill. It follows EPA. It funds DERA and the Targeted Airshed Program. That is scheduled to be on the House floor next week. We don't anticipate any major problems with the things that we follow. It tends to attract all measures of amendments relating to anything environmental. So I suspect there'll be some fireworks, but nothing that we really are going to care too much about. If the House is successful in moving the bill off the floor, the Senate is thinking about trying to package the Interior Appropriations Bill with 3 other appropriations bills to form kind of a minibus bill for the week of the 23rd. And again, the same caveats apply there. We're not expecting anything to impact our funding, but the bill could attract some unrelated attention. And with that, it's really, again, I think that was a really good trip, and that concludes our report.
Thank you, Chris. As you probably know, that announcement came out yesterday about California has reached its greenhouse gas reduction numbers ahead of schedule by about 2 years, and Senator Feinstein was very interested in that. So I tried to email Trevor Higgins the press release on that, but it got bounced back. But we'll follow up with that as well. I imagine you have been informing her as well of that event.
Yes. They're definitely very interested. If you want to send it to me through Lisa or whatnot, I can get it to him. But yeah, absolutely.
Okay, we'll keep working on that. She's very interested in that subject matter. So, okay, thank you very much, Chris. Other comment on this? Now, let me ask if any of our committee members have questions of Chris on that report.
None here.
Okay, thank you. And any public comment on the report from British? So none here, and I assume there's no public comment from any of your locations. Okay, we'll go to the next report from Carmen Group. And I believe Gary Weitzma is on the line for comment. Gary, will you give us an update, please, on anything that's new that's not in your written report?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Again, I echo what Chris said. It's good to have you all back here in Washington for a few days this week, and we also thought they were great meetings, advancing the ultra-low NOx rulemaking at the EPA. That's what our goal is, and we think we made progress in that. Point out just a couple of meetings that we were involved in, meeting at the EPA with Bill Wareham, the Assistant Administrator for Air there, who's well known to SCAQMD, and he's telling us that he may have some more news for us in the next 30 to 60 days on this. He seemed to have a positive outlook on the EPA's work on this and moving forward. So we'll be definitely following up with him in the near future. We also had a very good meeting at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, one of the business group entities that we had met with a group of them in June, and certainly putting a focus on how these business entities can be helpful to us in advancing this, controlling the emissions from the heavy trucks. So that was a very positive meeting as well, and hopefully the Chamber and others are going to be allies in our effort going forward there. The other big news, I guess, to report on is the ascension of Andrew Wheeler as the new acting administrator of the EPA. Just a few notes about Andrew. Some of us who know him, I've worked with Andrew on the Hill for a number of years. He's going to put a little different face on the EPA, I think, going forward. I think the policies will pretty much stay the same, but I think the style is going to be very different. Andrew is much more of a pragmatist. He's not an ideologue. I think getting a good window on Andrew, you can take a look at his statement to the EPA employees on Wednesday. He spoke to the EPA employees, and there's a video of it on the EPA website, and you can get a good sense of who Andrew is. He's an Eagle Scout. He's an admirer of Teddy Roosevelt. He's a former career official at the EPA. He started his career in the Toxic Substances Office at the EPA. So he has an affinity for the career officials that work at the EPA. He seems to really want to reach out and make a closer connection with the folks there at the EPA and smooth over some of the tensions that have been there at the agency in the past year or so. So another point he announced there Wednesday was that he had named Henry Darwin to be the acting deputy administrator, and I think we know Henry has been the chief of operations at the EPA there. So Andrew, I think, will be someone positive for us to work with, and we'll be arranging some meetings with him in the future. Just one other quick note, the Federal Highway Administration released its Conditions and Performance Report on highway freight transportation. Very, very interesting to take a look at that in the context of truck traffic, showing that truck traffic is at record levels now, and it's only going to get much greater in the future. So with that, I think that concludes my report today. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Gary. Any questions for Gary?
Nothing here.
Thank you, Dr. Burke. I have one question that is bothering me. Andrew Wheeler is the interim director. Is he likely to be the appointment, the approved appointment of President Trump?
That's a good question. I think the feeling right now is that he is going to remain as acting administrator at least through the election going into next year, and then it will be revisited at that point. But yeah, I think there's a very good likelihood that he he will be the choice, but I think that will be evaluated going into next year. There's a couple of other names out there that are floating around, and it's interesting that Andrew himself had told some of his friends a couple of months ago he didn't want the top job at EPA. He preferred to be sort of in the background. He's not one who craves the limelight and the TV cameras and that sort of thing. So, but I think if he does a good job here in the next few months, it's very likely he'll be named to that position.
And as the acting administrator, does he need Senate confirmation? Is there any other process? No.
He can act for 210 days.
Oh, okay. My executive officer is informing that he can act for 210 days. Okay. All right. So
Right.
That
Right.
settles that question. Okay. Thank you very much, Gary. Is there any public comment here on my report? Seeing none. What about, any public comment from the remote location?
No, Paul doesn't have anything to say.
Not hordes of people there, okay. We'll move on to Cassidy and Associates, and I believe we have Amelia Jenkins on the phone. Amelia, can you give us the recent update that's not in your written report, if there's anything? Go ahead.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. The one policy update we have is a report that came out this morning related to the glider kit issue. It appears now that the scientific study done at Tennessee Tech is the subject of scrutiny, and 7 House members on the House Science Committee, led by Congressman Lamar Smith of Texas, have sent a letter to EPA raising concerns with the study. This is just came out, but it is another sort of attack on the glider rule issue that we should probably keep tabs on. Other than that, we really enjoyed this trip in making sure that the board members and staff had really good interactions with the top-ranking Democrat on Transportation and Infrastructure, Energy and Commerce Committee staff, and some affiliated groups. So happy to answer any questions folks may have.
Thank you. Any questions for Amelia? Okay, and I have no questions. We want to keep a close eye on the glider kits. Obviously, we had a lot of conversations about that in our meetings. So, any public comment here on that report? Not seeing any public comment. Paul?
Paul doesn't have anything to say.
Okay, great. Now we'll move on to the state legislation and our state consultants. And we have first, we have Jason Gonzalez up. So good morning, Jason. Can you give us a report on anything new?
Good morning, Madam Chair and members. Not a whole lot to add, just very quickly I'll highlight the legislature is on summer recess, as you likely know. They return August 6th, and final adjournment, because we're in the second year of a 2-year session, is August 31st. So we're going to be entering the last 4 weeks of session. Given it's an election year, I'm sure it'll be smooth sailing and no lack of excitement here in Sacramento. But with that, we'll look forward to sharing in some future successes in August. So I'm happy to answer any questions in addition to the report.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions for Jason? Seeing none from here, any questions? Any public comment? No public comment here. I think no public comment from our other remote locations. We'll move on to the Quintana Cruise Company, and we have Roxana Bega Mohammadi.
There you go.
Yes. Getting good at this.
Thank you so much. Good morning,
Good morning.
Madam Chair and members. So this last month was marked by significant events. June 29th served as a significant deadline for all fiscal bills to be heard and reported out of its policy committees. July 6th served as a similar date for non-fiscal bills. So, unfortunately, as we mentioned last month, Assemblymember Burke's bill, AB 2506, to require state fleets to purchase near zero and zero emission vehicles did not make it out of Assembly appropriations on May 25th. With respect to Assemblymember Grayson's bill, AB 2091, which requires the Board of Forestry and Fire Protection to establish standards for prescribed burning and certify prescribed burn managers, it made it through the Senate Committee on Natural Resources and Water on June 26th, and it'll be heard in the Senate Committee on Appropriations on August 6th, which is actually the first day the legislature will be reconvening. And most importantly, as you're aware, South Coast sponsored AB 327, which was authored by Assemblymember Gibson. The bill authorized the governing board of the South Coast District to adopt rules and regulations that require public agencies to replace existing vehicles with the cleanest commercially available vehicles. The bill was double referred to a Senate Committee on Environmental Quality on June 20th and Senate Committee on Transportation and Housing. The bill passed through the Committee on Environmental Quality on a partisan 5-2 vote. Unfortunately, the bill faced significant opposition by the California Transit Association, LA Metro, and OCTA after the bill passed through the Environmental Quality Committee. Essentially, it came down to Senator Bell, chair of the Senate Committee on Transportation and Housing, saying that he had significant concerns regarding the timing of this bill since it was introduced in print on June 4th. Due to the chair's concern, the bill ended up being held without recommendation in the committee. Lastly, Senator Jackson's bill, SB 1260, would make various changes related to local fire planning, prescribed fire requirements, and broader prevention efforts. The bill was passed out of its policy committee on June 27th and will be heard in the Assembly Committee on Appropriations when session reconvenes. I can answer any questions.
On AB 327, is it still alive? Can it still go somewhere, or
No.
It's done? Okay,
No, unfortunately.
It's done. Okay, all right, thank you. Any questions for Roxana? Any other questions? No, I have none. Thank you for that report. Any questions from my members?
How come my daughter's bill didn't get out?
Right, that bill deserves
okay, that
priority
was
on everything.
Go
Thank
ahead,
you.
Roxana, answer the question.
Okay. I think it's best to ask her. I'm sure there were some dynamics. I think that there was some concerns about the fiscal aspect of the bill, and I would probably refer to her to discuss some of the politics behind it.
Okay.
So part of the answer to that was ask your daughter. Anyway, we are appreciative of the work that Autumn Burke does in the legislature. She's helped us on a number of items. Any public comment on that report? Seeing none, and assuming no public comment from the remote locations, here's that. So we'll move on to California advisors, and Jacob Moss, I believe, is on the line with us. So good morning, Jacob. Can you give us an update, please, of anything that
Good morning, Madam Chair.
Good morning.
I do not have a lot to add to my report. It's I think, fairly comprehensive, and I think we had a pretty successful year regarding the greenhouse gas reduction funding that we were working on, and we are getting to work on next year already. So that's all I have, and I'm available for any questions.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions on that report? Okay. Any public comment? And no public comment from your locations? Okay. Okay.
No, Paul doesn't have anything to say.
Paul should get more involved.
Paul's back there eating, man.
Right now, he's busy.
He's busy.
So we have an action item this morning, and we can proceed with that, right? We've got 3 people, so we do have a quorum. And so this is the proposed sales tax increase, a legislative concept that we talked about some months back. And we're revisiting that this morning, and our Philip Crabb has a good report on it, I assume. Go ahead.
Sure. Good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. As you know, the South Coast Air Basin has among the worst air quality in the nation and is an extreme non-attainment for ozone. Our AQMP addresses this problem, but requires substantial and sustainable funding in order to improve air quality levels to meet federal rules and reduce significant public health risks. This proposed bill would seek authorization from the legislature to put a quarter-cent sales tax increase proposal on the ballot for voter approval within the South Coast Air District. The key focus of this proposal would be to help raise the needed funds over $1 billion per year over the next 13 years to support the 2016 AQMP and facilitate the significant reduction of air pollution in the South Coast. This bill would not directly create a ballot measure. It would only be an authorization bill to allow either South Coast Governing Board action or the voter-driven initiative process to put this proposal on the ballot. Therefore, we expect it to be a majority vote bill in the legislature. We have also been given estimates that this proposal could generate up to $700 million per year for air pollution reduction within the South Coast, which would go a long way towards reducing the air pollution problem. And a large portion of the funding would go to providing critically needed incentives to promote the development and deployment of clean technology and accelerate fleet turnover from dirty, heavy-duty diesel trucks and other vehicles and equipment to cleaner alternatives. This is needed to meet the upcoming federal air quality deadlines beginning in 2023 and to protect public health. The goal would be for this initiative to go on the ballot in 2020. A public opinion poll commissioned by AQMD and conducted earlier this year found that residents were generally supportive of the use of incentives to help fund the transition to cleaner vehicles. This proposal would give voters the opportunity to decide through the ballot process if AQMD's proposed revenue-generating mechanism is an option that they would want to pursue to help achieve clean air. Other air districts have expressed interest in this proposal and may co-sponsor this bill if approved. So staff recommends a sponsor-in-concept position on this bill to allow flexibility in Sacramento and within the legislative process. And if approved, staff will keep the committee updated in terms of bill language and legislative developments regarding this proposal. And I also believe that our Chief Deputy Counsel, Barbara Baird, had something to add.
Thank you. Yes, Dr. Burke and board committee members, the benefits of this bill that Philip mentioned, which would include getting emission reductions in order to help us meet the 2023 ozone standard and the 2031 ozone standard, are also reflected in another requirement of the 2023 standard, which is that because that our AQMP relied on advanced technology measures, which are sometimes called the black box for meeting that standard, we have to submit to EPA 3 years before the reductions are required, what they call a contingency measure, which would be to go into place if we don't get the reductions from other sources. And so that contingency measure is actually due in 2020, according to early 2020, according to CARB. And so we think that it's possible that this measure could help us meet that requirement by, if it's get adopted in the legislature and if a ballot proposition is enacted, that we could submit a commitment to spending that money towards NOx reductions as a way of helping fulfill that contingency measure requirement. And I can't make any guarantee about that because EPA has never approved a contingency measure of this nature, but we would want to work with them and see if they could allow us to use that. And that's important because if we don't submit, and when I say we, I mean CARB and us together, don't submit a sufficient contingency measure in 2020, we could be subject to sanctions as early as the end of 2021. And hopefully this would help us ward that off.
Thank you. Any questions?
No, not here.
Okay. So, I think part of the process here would be, this obviously, will have to be approved by
I'd be
the
willing
board.
to, I'd be willing to move this.
You'd be willing to what?
Move it.
Move it, okay. So we have, is that a motion from you, Dr. Burke? Or yeah,
Yes.
okay. And may I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Will we need to do public comment on this? So there's a motion on the floor on this, and we will ask for public comment. So and Paul has nothing to say about it? Okay. Then I'll call for a roll call vote on it now, please.
Dr. Burke?
Yes.
Dr. Parker?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell?
Yes.
Motion passes 3-0.
Okay. So, what's left on our agenda is there any other business to come before this committee? Any member wants to bring anything forward? No. And we can have public comment on any other matter that isn't on our agenda. Any public comment? Nothing here, and I'm assuming nothing there. So, the next meeting will...
Oh, wait, Paul has something to say. No, he changed his mind. He changed his mind. He said it's okay.
Okay, good. Thank you all, and thank you, Paul, for being there this morning.
Yeah.
This meeting is adjourned until September 14th. Okay.